The tick slipped out right in the middle of my answer to my boss. It wasn't big. It wasn't dramatic. That was the worst part. It was small, fast, involuntary. And it happened at the exact moment everyone in the room was looking at me. My neck jerked to the side. A short sound slipped out of my throat, and I saw my boss's expression change before I even finished the sentence. He didn't yell. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just let out this awkward little laugh and said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "You okay there?" A couple of people smiled. Others looked away. Someone shifted in their chair. Someone dropped their eyes to their laptop a little too fast. No one was cruel. And somehow that hurt even more, because I knew that kind of silence. The kind where people notice something but pretend they didn't. The kind that leaves you alone with your own humiliation. I still tried to smile. I finished the sentence like nothing had happened. Wrote something meaningless on my notepad just to keep my hands busy, and counted the seconds until I could leave that room without looking dramatic. The second the meeting ended, I went straight to the bathroom, locked the door, put both hands on the sink, and before I could think about anything else, I said the word I had spent my whole life saying. Sorry, to a mirror, to an empty bathroom, to a body I had treated like it was always 1 second away from humiliating me. And that was the moment one question finally hit me the way it should have. How much of my life had I already lost trying to stop the world from noticing something I didn't even understand myself? If you want to know how a woman can spend her entire life being praised for being calm, mature, and in control while secretly living in fear of her own body, stay with me. Because this story doesn't start with a diagnosis. It starts the day I realized my greatest talent wasn't self-control. It was turning fear into good manners. She always knew how to behave. Not because someone taught her, but because she learned early that the world does not like deviations. From a very young age, she noticed it. Those who step out of the script pay a price. So she created vigilance, internal, constant, a permanent attention to herself. Her tone of voice was calculated, soft when needed, firm when required. Her body followed the same logic, an extension of her will, trained to stay quiet, discreet, fitted into the invisible rules of what is acceptable. She mastered the art of silence, a contained smile at the right moments, direct eye contact, never too much. Everything to keep her place. While others moved forward naturally, she stayed, functioning, impeccable on the outside, contained. She followed her routine without questioning it, and believed that was strength, until the moment something escaped. It came small, almost irrelevant, a tongue click in the middle of an important sentence. Short, dry, not thought through, not chosen, then another and another. Sometimes a throat sound that was not a cough, repeated, without an obvious reason. In serious meetings, in the silence between one sentence and the next. That out-of-place sound crossed the air, and it always came after. The regret, the heat in her face, the panic that someone might have noticed, that someone might have realized it was not a habit. It was something she could not stop. It was on an ordinary afternoon, at a social event full of voices, that she sensed something was different. The pressure in her chest started discreetly, familiar. Then it grew. It rose behind her ribs, tightened her neck, collected in her face. It was a strange urgency, as if her body wanted to move on its own. She felt her shoulder pull, a sudden urge to turn her head to the side. She held it, suppressed it, pretended. She adjusted her hair, shifted her posture, smiled. No one could see, no one could know. Her speech became slightly faster. Her hands tightened around the glass too hard. Her fingers trembled. Between one sentence and the next, it slipped out. A short sound, a soft touch. Involuntary. It cut through her own voice. Some people around her did not notice. Others simply kept talking. But to her, it felt like a neon warning. Everything no one could see, she felt. The constant effort, the accumulated tension, the exhaustion of holding back what insisted on coming out. Who was she without control, without anticipating, without containing? The fear was not the sound, it was the look that would come after. The impact was not an explosion, There was no crying, no scene. It was an internal shift, silent, definitive. An uncomfortable certainty settled in. This was not just nervousness, not a quirk, not a lack of effort. It was something that refused to be pushed aside any longer. In the middle of the crowded room, she stopped. Not on the outside, on the inside. She let the air out slowly. And for the first time, she did not fight as hard. The movement came small. The sound, minimal, almost imperceptible to others. To her, it was enormous. There, she understood something new. Maybe it was not a flaw, not a character defect, not a lack of discipline. Maybe it was a body asking for truth. The next day, she woke up just like always. The alarm went off. She got up, took a shower, put on the body she knew how to wear. Nothing had changed, and yet, everything felt off. As she got ready, she repeated the same phrases she always did. It was just exhaustion, just anxiety. Everyone goes through this, she told herself firmly, as if closing a door from the inside. In the mirror, she observed her face with exaggerated attention, her eyes too focused, her mouth too still. Everything seemed under control. She took a deep breath. I function. I always function. On the way to work, she trained silence, her body tense, alert to every micro movement. The vigilance resumed its post. If she felt the impulse, she would hold it. If something slipped out, she would disguise it. It always worked that way. At the office, she greeted people precisely, a proper good morning, a brief smile, no excess. During the first meeting, she kept her hands folded on the table, her feet firmly planted on the ground, her whole body aligned to avoid betraying anything. But the effort was taking its toll. She noticed that she wasn't hearing everything they were saying. Part of her attention was trapped inside, in her jaw, her neck, her breathing. When she felt the familiar pressure building, she reacted quickly. A fake cough, a sip of water, a rehearsed movement. Nothing came out. Silent victory. She felt relief. And then, something more uncomfortable. A tiredness that didn't come from her body, but from her soul. During lunch, she laughed at the right moment, spoke little, observed a lot, while her colleagues talked about plans, trips, and decisions made without apparent effort. She felt out of rhythm, as if she were always one step behind, not because of lack of ability, but because of too much control. At some point in the conversation, she realized something uncomfortable. She wasn't living. She was managing her own existence. This realization came without drama, without shock. It came as a truth too simple to ignore. Still, she tried. In the afternoon, when her body begged for rest, she ignored it. When she felt the impulse rise, she tightened her fingers under the table. When the sound threatened to come, she swallowed hard. It worked, but it hurt. By the end of the day, she left exhausted, not because of the work, but because of the invisible effort to seem normal. On the bus, sitting among strangers, she let her body relax just a little, just a little. She felt a small movement escape, then another. No one reacted, no one looked, yet her heart raced. There, she understood something she had tried to deny all day. The problem wasn't what escaped. It was how much she lived to stop it from escaping. She got home in silence, sat on her bed, and stayed there, not fixing anything, not explaining anything. For the first time, she considered an idea she had always avoided. What if this wasn't a lack of control? What if it was something that deserved to be understood? She didn't decide anything, not yet, but the invisible agreement she had made with herself began to crack. She could not remember when the guilt began. It felt too old to have a clear origin, like something passed down without explanation. Since childhood, she learned to apologize quickly, before even understanding why. Sorry for the noise, sorry for being late, sorry for taking up space. It was automatic, almost too polite. That day, while organizing old papers in a forgotten drawer, she found a notebook from her teenage years, a simple cover, yellowed pages. She recognized her own handwriting. On the first page, A name, Hannah. Seeing her name there, written by her own hand, caused a quiet impact, as if she were looking at someone distant, someone she knew, but no longer listened to. She flipped through it slowly. Notes about school, to-do lists, sentences interrupted halfway, and apologies. So many of them. Sorry for talking too much. Sorry for drawing attention. Sorry for not being able to stop. She closed the notebook gently. The air felt heavier. She remembered her mother correcting gestures at the table, her father asking for silence with a look. There was no cruelty. There was expectation. Be discreet. Be strong. Do not be a burden. Every small slip came with an apology, not always spoken, sometimes just a shrug, an awkward smile. She grew up believing that something about her required constant compensation. That effort was the price of acceptance. No one ever said it out loud, but it was repeated in gestures, in looks, in pauses. As she put the drawer back in order, her body reacted. A brief movement, a minimal sound. The first response came automatically. Sorry. She stopped in the middle of the word. That was the moment. Small, but decisive. She realized the guilt came before the mistake. That she apologized not for what she did, but for being the way she was. She sat on the floor, leaning against the bed, the notebook still in her hands. She did not cry, but something shifted. She understood she was carrying a guilt that did not come from a real failure. It was inherited, learned, silent. The question arrived quietly. What if the problem had never been a lack of effort? What if it had been too much of it? Too much restraint, too much vigilance, too much fear of being inconvenient? For the first time, she looked at herself with less accusation, not with indulgence, with curiosity. Hannah. The name echoed inside her. She still did not know what to do with that realization, but something had changed. The guilt no longer felt like proof. It felt like a symptom, and that opened a new space. Small, but real. After the notebook, something stayed open inside her. It was not relief, it was fear. A different kind of fear, without a clear object, without a name. In the days that followed, Hannah realized she no longer feared only her body. She feared what might happen if she stopped fighting. She felt it in the mornings, before even getting out of bed. A quiet tightness, like a warning. If I stop, what comes next? That question was not curiosity, it was a threat. At work, she kept her usual posture, delivered tasks, met deadlines, functioned, but something was new now. A layer of awareness that would not turn off. When the impulse appeared, she held it, like always. But along with control came a dangerous thought. What if I did not hold it? The idea crossed quickly, and that was enough to speed up her heart. It was not fear of the sound, not of the movement. It was fear of the domino effect. If I let it happen, maybe I will not be able to stop. If I cannot stop, someone will notice. If someone notices, everything changes. That was the silent calculation running in her all the time. At home, alone, the fear grew. It did not shrink. In her room, without an audience, her body felt more restless, as if constant vigilance had exhausted even her muscles. One movement slipped out, then another. Her body seemed to test limits. Hannah sat on the bed, her hands resting at her sides. She took a deep breath. The fear did not come from what was happening. It came from what it might mean. If this is not controllable, if this does not pass, if this is part of me. The word part echoed inside her. Until then, she had always believed it was an accident, something external, something to be corrected. Thinking it might be structural opened an emptiness. She stood up and walked around the room, tried to organize objects, fold clothes, create order, but her body did not follow the same rhythm. She felt her throat tighten, not from crying, from containment. There, she realized something uncomfortable. She was not afraid of losing control. She was afraid of losing the story she told about herself. The strong woman, the discreet one, the capable one. Who would she be without that? That realization did not bring answers. It brought silence. Hannah sat on the floor, her back against the wall. She closed her eyes. For the first time, she let the fear exist without pushing it away. She did not try to correct it. She did not try to explain it. She stayed there, feeling. Her body moved slightly. She did not interrupt it. Nothing collapsed. The world did not end. That was the moment, small, but decisive. Maybe fear was not a sign of danger. Maybe it was a sign of passage. She still did not know how to cross. But for the first time, she stopped running. The longing arrived without warning and without memory. Hannah noticed it on an ordinary afternoon, crossing the street after work. The light turned green. People moved forward. She did too. But something hurt in a strange way. It was not sadness for the past. It was the absence of something that had never existed. As she walked, she noticed a woman standing on the sidewalk, talking on the phone. The conversation seemed trivial. Her body relaxed. Without noticing, the woman pulled at the sleeve of her shirt. Once, then again, and once more. Hannah watched without thinking anything. She did not find it strange. She did not judge. The gesture simply existed. Only a few steps later did the realization arrive, slow and uncomfortable. If it had been her, she would have noticed. She would have corrected herself. She would have felt ashamed. She might have apologized silently. Further ahead, she heard a loud laugh. Loose, uncalculated, uncontained. She saw bodies taking up space, voices overlapping. No visible attempt to fit in. A man on the corner adjusted his cap 3 times in a row. The gesture was quick, automatic. He kept talking, without pausing, without apologizing. Hannah did not judge. For the first time, she did not feel difference. She felt recognition. A deep tightness settled in her chest. It was not envy. It was awareness arriving late. She did not want those people's lives. She wanted the freedom she had never allowed herself to experience. At home, she sat on the couch without turning on the lights. She stayed there, in the comfortable dusk of the evening, let her mind wander. She thought of how many choices had been made through restraint. Courses chosen because they required less exposure. Jobs accepted because they demanded control. Relationships kept on the surface, not for lack of desire, but from too much caution. She realized she had always lived like someone carrying an overfilled glass. Any wrong step could spill everything. So she walked slowly, always. That realization brought a new kind of pain, a quiet form of grief. She missed the woman she could have been if she had not spent so much time holding herself back. She missed the spontaneous version, the one who makes mistakes without punishment, the one who takes up space without asking permission. The longing did not come with clear images. It came as sensation, like hearing music from a place you have never been. And still, something recognizes it. That night, Hannah scrolled through old photos on her phone, short trips, formal events, contained smiles. In none of the images did she seem absent, but in almost all of them, she seemed reduced. That was when something shifted. She realized she had not only been trying to avoid pain, she had been avoiding life. That understanding did not come as an accusation. It came as a long exhale. She understood that the fear of being noticed had stolen more than peace. It had stolen possibilities. She stayed with that idea without trying to solve it, without promising change, without planning courage. She simply let it exist. Before sleeping, a timid question formed. What would it be like to live without constantly anticipating? The answer did not come, but the question remained. And that alone was different. The longing for what never happened did not paralyze her. It did not push her either, but it opened a crack. An inner space where the future, for the first time, did not feel like something to be controlled. Maybe it could be lived. The anger arrived quietly, not as an explosion, as a steady, low heat. Hannah noticed it on a morning that seemed too normal. Lukewarm coffee, repeated news, the same clothes chosen without thinking. Nothing had gone wrong, and yet something inside her was irritated. On her way to work, she felt her body tense, not from fear, from tired restraint. When an impulse came, she held it, like always. But this time, along with the control, something else came. A dry thought. Why do I have to hold it all the time? The question was not curiosity. It was accusation. At the office, she heard a colleague comment, without malice, "You're so calm, so controlled." Hannah smiled, automatically. Inside, something closed off. Calm wasn't a choice. Control wasn't a virtue. It was survival. She sat at her desk and started working, her hands quick, her mind sharp, but the anger grew in silence. Anger for having learned too early to fit in. Anger for having been praised precisely for what made her shrink. Anger at a world that confused silence with balance. This anger didn't have a clear target. It wasn't against anyone specific. It was against the whole logic. During the afternoon meeting, someone interrupted her speech. Unknowingly, like it always happens. Hannah fell silent, like always. But this time, it wasn't just restraint. It was a forced choice. She felt her jaw tighten, her chest warm. That was when something shifted. She realized she wasn't just tired. She was angry for having been trained to disappear. The anger didn't ask for a scream. It asked for recognition. When she got home, she walked faster than usual, not to escape, but to release something she couldn't name. In her room, she took off her shoes with force, sat on the bed, took a deep breath. A movement came. She didn't interrupt it. The sound was low, short, and with it came an unexpected feeling. Relief, not from losing control, but from not punishing herself. Hannah realized, right there, something essential. Anger was not the enemy. It was a response to the constant effort, to the permanent vigilance, to a life lived in containment mode. Until then, she had believed that feeling anger was dangerous, that anger took control away, that anger pushed people away. Now, she began to understand something else. Maybe anger was simply an internal limit being crossed too many times. She didn't decide to confront anyone. She didn't make speeches. She didn't change her life that night. But she let the anger exist without correcting it. And that changed everything. Because, for the first time, Hannah didn't direct the anger against herself. She just listened to it. Hope appeared quietly, almost shy, as if it did not want to get in the way. After recognizing her anger, Hannah believed something had finally changed. Not on the outside, on the inside. In the first few days, she felt a light relief, as if she had found a crack where air could come in. She thought maybe this was how turning points happened. Silently, gradually. She allowed herself small gestures. She did not correct herself immediately once. She let a movement pass without punishment. She even felt a restrained sense of pride. Maybe I'm learning, she thought. Maybe this is all it takes, a fine adjustment. That idea stayed with her for an entire week. She woke up believing something was better. She went to sleep repeating it to herself, until the day she realized the effort had returned, more disguised, more exhausting. In the middle of a simple conversation, she felt her body tense again. The impulse came strong. She tried to apply everything she had been practicing, breathing, waiting, not reacting with guilt. It didn't work. The sound escaped louder than before, short, unexpected. A few people looked. Nothing dramatic, nothing cruel. Still, something inside her gave way. Not because of their reaction, but because of the bitter realization. The hope that acceptance alone would be enough had been too simple. Hannah stepped away, went to the bathroom, locked the door. She looked at her reflection. Her face was far too calm for what she felt. That was when the realization came. And it hurt. It wasn't that she was failing the process. It was that the process wasn't complete yet. Acceptance hadn't solved everything. Listening hadn't silenced her body. And that broke something fragile. She sat on the toilet lid, arms resting on her legs. She felt a tiredness deeper than physical. She wanted to give up. Not on living. On trying. For a few minutes, she thought she might have been fooling herself from the start, that all of this was just another attempt to adapt better to what felt like a flaw. That thought brought a cold emptiness. But in the middle of frustration, something became clear. The hope hadn't been false. It had just been insufficient. She was searching for solutions where there were still only questions, demanding relief from a process that required deeper understanding. That awareness didn't bring immediate comfort, but it brought honesty. Hannah left the bathroom changed, not more confident, but more lucid. She understood she wasn't on a straight path. She was in a crossing, and crossings don't move forward without stumbling. Broken hope didn't push her backward. It didn't move her forward either, but it stripped away the illusion of shortcuts. That night, alone in her room, she did something she had been postponing. She opened her browser, typed slowly, repetitive, involuntary movements, sounds I can't control. She hesitated, then pressed enter. The screen filled with unfamiliar words, tics, neurological, syndrome. She closed everything before reading too much. She wasn't ready yet, but for the first time, she admitted something essential. She needed answers she didn't have. The day after the search, Hannah woke up with a strange feeling. Not panic, not calm either, as if her body had spent the entire night talking to her, and now waited for an answer. She stayed in bed for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling. An impulse came in her shoulder. She let it happen. A short sound followed. Low. Nothing changed in the room, but something changed in her. She got up slowly, made coffee, sat at the table with her phone in her hand. Opened the browser. The words were still there, saved, like a door left slightly open. Repetitive, involuntary movements. Sounds I can't control. Her finger hovered over the screen. She almost closed everything again. The urge to return to what was familiar came strong. Back to functioning mode. Back to don't think about this mode. But this time, she didn't obey that impulse. She took a deep breath and typed something else. Appointment. Specialist. Evaluation. The options appeared: clinics, time slots, forms. Hannah felt a tightness in her chest. Not fear of the doctor, fear of what a doctor might confirm. Because if there was a name, she could no longer pretend it was just a habit. And at the same time, a name could be a key. She was caught between, like holding a rope with sweaty hands. Her phone buzzed with a message from a friend, Lena, asking if she wanted to go out over the weekend. Hannah stared at the screen, thought about replying with the automatic yes, but her throat tightened, not from sadness, from truth held back. She typed, deleted, typed again, left just one simple sentence. I'm pretty exhausted, but I'd like to see you. I need to talk. Sent it. Her stomach turned. It wasn't the conversation itself. It was the gesture of stopping to protect others from her reality. Minutes later, Lena replied with a calm Hannah didn't expect. Of course. We'll meet, no rush, at your pace. Hannah read it twice. No pressure there, no awkwardness. That opened space. She returned to the appointment form, full name, date of birth. Chief complaint. That part froze her. Chief complaint. How do you write what you've spent your whole life hiding? How do you summarize invisible effort without sounding exaggerated? She typed slowly. I have involuntary movements and sounds. I try to control them, but it has been getting worse and it's affecting my life. Read it, felt shame, then something else, relief, as if she had finally told the truth without apologizing for it. She chose a time, confirmed. When the screen showed appointment scheduled, Hannah went still. Her hand trembled slightly. It wasn't certainty. It wasn't cure. Just a step. But for the first time, she wasn't trying to defeat her body. She was trying to understand it. And that, even small, carried the weight of a beginning. The office was simpler than Hannah had imagined. Nothing there felt definitive. No atmosphere of revelation. No sense of a historic moment. And maybe that was why the impact was greater. She sat in the chair with her hands resting on her lap. tried to keep her body neutral, as she always had. The doctor asked direct questions: when it started, how often, what she felt beforehand. Hannah answered carefully, not to hide, out of habit. She spoke about the sounds, the movements, the constant effort to hold back, the exhaustion that came afterward, the vigilance that never shut off, the shame that appeared even when no one seemed to notice. As she spoke, she realized something unexpected. She was not defending herself. She was describing. That surprised her. The doctor listened without interrupting. He took notes, sometimes nodded. When she finished, there was a brief silence, not uncomfortable, just suspended. Then he said the name, without weight, without dramatization, as if naming something that had always existed: Tourette syndrome. The words entered slowly, not as shock, as alignment. Hannah felt her body react before her mind, a physical relief, as if something had stopped resisting. Everything began to reorganize inside. Her entire childhood took on a new meaning: the automatic apologies, the excessive effort to appear calm, the constant sense of failing at something invisible. It was not lack of control, it was not nervousness, it was not weakness, it was neurological. That realization did not make her cry. It did not bring euphoria. It brought ground. The doctor kept explaining, spoke of variations, of intensity, of possibilities. He mentioned therapy, strategies, support, if she wanted. Hannah listened, but part of her was somewhere else, mentally returning to old scenes, revisiting moments with a new map. Nothing she had lived needed to be erased, but everything could be understood. When she left the office, the day went on as usual. Cars passing, people talking on the phone, the city functioning, but she was no longer the same. Not because she had received a magical answer, but because, for the first time, her story made sense without effort. On the way back, she felt a movement arise. A short sound came with it. She did not shrink. She did not explain herself. She did not accuse herself. She simply kept going. That night, at home, she sat alone in her room, thought about everything she had carried without a name and how it had shaped her. The diagnosis did not solve her life. It did not promise ease, but it removed the oldest weight she carried, the belief that she needed to be fixed. Hannah understood something definitive. She had never been broken. From that day on, she no longer needed to fight her body. She needed to learn how to live with it, and that changed everything. The time between one response and the next changed the rhythm of things. Hannah noticed it without knowing exactly when it happened. It wasn't after the appointment, nor after any specific conversation. It happened between one day and the next. She began to notice her body not as an obstacle, but as a presence. Something that had been there all along, waiting to be heard without urgency. In the mornings, she started waking up a few minutes before the alarm, not to anticipate tasks, but to feel the weight of her body on the mattress, her breath coming in without correction, a movement that appeared, a sound that sometimes followed. She didn't celebrate. She didn't fight it either. She simply stayed. That was new. For years, she had lived like a visitor in herself, coming in quickly, fixing what was necessary, leaving before anything could escape. Now, she remained. She noticed it in a simple detail. Walking to work, she felt an impulse rise in her shoulder. A brief sound came with it. She didn't freeze. She didn't speed up. She didn't explain herself internally. She kept walking. The world didn't react. People didn't change direction. Nothing collapsed. That moment stayed with her all day, not as a victory, but as confirmation. At work, she heard her own voice without adjusting its tone all the time. She spoke when it was necessary. She stayed silent when she wanted to. She felt her body grow tired, and she respected it. That was the reconnection. Not a grand gesture, but a series of small recognitions. At night, at home, she sat on the bedroom floor, back against the wall, knees bent. She closed her eyes. She remembered how many times she had treated her body as something to be defeated, as if it were a persistent mistake, a disruption in the narrative of who she thought she needed to be. There, something reorganized itself. She realized her body had never been against her. It had been the messenger of everything she hadn't allowed herself to say. That understanding didn't come with intense emotion. It came with calm, a calm that doesn't numb, a calm that holds. Hannah took a deep breath, felt the movement happen, did not interrupt it. It felt like returning to a house after years away. Nothing was exactly the same, but the rooms were still recognizable. She didn't have all the answers yet. She still felt afraid at times. She still got tired, but now she knew where to find herself when that happened. In her own body, not as a battlefield, as territory. That reconnection didn't solve everything, but it shifted the axis. For the first time, Hannah didn't feel at the edge of her own life. She was inside, present, living in it. And that, more than any name or explanation, began to return a forgotten feeling: wholeness. Nothing changed all at once, and that was the hardest part to accept. After the diagnosis, Hannah did not wake up different. Her body did not go quiet. The movements kept coming, the sounds too. What changed was the place from which she watched all of this. In the first days, she walked like someone testing the ground, without confidence, without hurry. She felt the impulse rise in her shoulder, sometimes in her neck, a quick adjustment, a short sound. The old reflex still appeared: hold, correct, shrink. But something new slipped in between impulse and reaction, a minimal space, almost imperceptible. One morning, in the bathroom, she was brushing her teeth when her shoulder moved on its own. A short sound came with it, old reflex. For a moment, the urge to correct appeared, straighten her posture, hold her breath, go back to control. But something failed in that reflex. Not from effort, from exhaustion. She simply kept brushing her teeth. The foam fell into the sink. The mirror did not react. Nothing needed to be explained, not even to herself. It did not bring immediate relief. It brought strangeness, like using a muscle that had never been used. Throughout the day, she noticed a different kind of tiredness, not from holding back, from sustaining presence. She thought about how many versions of herself she had built just to fit. The quiet one, the controlled one, the one who doesn't bother. Those versions had been useful. They had protected her. But now they were heavy. She did not feel anger toward them. She felt a tired kind of gratitude. At work, she spoke little that morning. She listened more. When she felt the impulse in her neck, she rested her arm on the desk, let the movement happen, discreet. No one commented. No one interrupted. Even so, her heart sped up. Not from fear of other people's eyes, from the strangeness of not defending herself. Hannah realized something uncomfortable there. She was not ready to live without constant vigilance. Control had been her home for a long time. In the afternoon, her body asked for a break early. It was not just physical fatigue, it was what comes from too much attention. She went to the bathroom, locked the door, leant her back against the cold wall, breathed. She did not try to fix anything, just admitted she was tired. When she got home, the sky was already dark. She sat on the couch without turning on the lights, let her body sink. A sound escaped, then a small movement in her hand. She did not stop it, felt shame for a second. Then something less stable, a kind of permission that was not yet comfort. Hannah thought about telling someone, thought about not telling, thought about how life had always demanded that she choose between hiding and explaining. Neither option felt enough now. She picked up her phone, opened her chat with Lena, typed, deleted, typed again. She did not write the name of the condition, did not describe symptoms. She wrote just enough not to lie. There are things in my body I don't control. I'm learning to deal with them. Sent it. Her body reacted. Her heart raced. A sound slipped out. She did not punish herself. That was the difference. Acceptance did not fix her life. did not organize the future, did not promise constant lightness, but it took away the silent violence. Hannah saw that clearly. She no longer had to defeat her body to exist, nor apologize for living in it. Acceptance, in that moment, did not mean liking. It meant stopping the attack, and that was already immense. She would still have hard days, moments of fear, exhaustion, but now she knew she could go through them without leaving herself behind. Imperfect, incomplete, enough. Nor as a dividing line. It arrived as an ordinary day. Hannah woke up to the distant noise of the street, a car passing, a gate slamming, the world in motion, not waiting for her. She stayed in bed for a few minutes, felt the weight of her body on the mattress, a light impulse in her shoulder, a short sound that came without warning. She did not try to stop it. She did not interpret it either. She simply kept breathing. That was where everything had changed. For a long time, she had lived waiting for the moment when her body would finally obey, or the moment she would learn how to control it once and for all, or the moment someone would tell her exactly who she needed to be in order to function better. None of that happened. What happened was simpler and harder. She stopped negotiating her own existence. In the bathroom mirror, while washing her face, she noticed something subtle. Her gaze was different, no longer searching for correction, but for presence. She saw her face. She saw her body. Without adjusting, in the kitchen, she let the coffee brew a little too long. She laughed to herself, a brief laugh, real, not because everything was fine, but because, for the first time, she did not need to prove anything. She left the house with ordinary steps, not rushed, not overly careful. On the way, she felt a movement rise in her neck. Then another, smaller one. A sound came with it. She kept walking. The world answered with indifference. And that was liberating. Hannah understood something then that she had not understood before. Her body did not need to be overcome for life to happen. It needed to be included in plans, in relationships, in good days and difficult ones. That did not erase fear, nor exhaustion, nor moments of shame that would still appear. But it shifted the axis. Instead of asking, how do I make this stop, she began to ask, how do I move forward with this? That question was not heavy with urgency. It came with curiosity. In the afternoon, she sat on a park bench for a few minutes, watched people pass, different bodies, different rhythms. She thought about how many versions of herself she had abandoned for not fitting, and how now she no longer had to choose only one. She did not feel cured. She did not feel ready. She did not feel resolved. She felt whole, not because everything was organized, but because nothing needed to be hidden in order to exist. The rebirth was not erasing the past. It was giving meaning back to it. Everything that once felt like failure now aligned as a path. Hannah stood up from the bench and continued on. Without announcement, without an audience, not as someone who had won, but as someone who had finally stopped fighting herself. And that, quietly, was the beginning of a possible life. For a long time, I thought control meant strength. I thought staying still meant I was winning. But it turns out holding everything in has a cost. Not all at once. Quietly. Daily. What changed my life wasn't fixing my body. It was finally listening to it. Understanding that what I called discipline was often fear in disguise, and that what I called weakness was my body asking for truth. There was no miracle moment, no instant relief, just permission. Permission to stop apologizing for existing. Permission to notice myself without shame. Permission to let my body be part of the conversation. If any part of this story felt familiar, if you've been holding yourself together for longer than you can remember, you're not broken. You're tired. And maybe, like me, you're not meant to control yourself better. You're meant to understand yourself more deeply. If this story stayed with you, maybe it's time to listen to what your body has been trying to say. Not to fix it, not to silence it, just to hear it. That permission, it starts now.